Welcome. So, as witches, we're always looking for different ways that we can bring more of the spiritual into our daily living. This helps us raise our vibrations, which in turn allows us to more deeply access our spiritual abilities and gifts. So, when you do more of the spiritual, you invite in more of the spiritual. So, Merry Meet, I'm Aislin. This is Ask Aislin, and I'm here tonight talking about 7 different ways you can bring more of the spiritual into your life or spiritualize your daily living. So, if you're here with me live, welcome. You can leave questions and comments in the chat. There's going to be a Q&A at the end on any question that you have. And if you like what you hear, definitely leave a thumbs up or a heart somewhere during this episode, and that helps it get into the feed of more people. If you're watching this back later on YouTube, make sure you subscribe to the channel, Body, Mind, Witchcraft, to make sure you don't miss any future episodes. All right, so we are going to dive right in now and talk about 7 simple practices you can do to spiritualize your life. So, a highly effective way of deepening our connection with the divine is through our spirituality and spiritualizing those various aspects of the mundane life. Make the mundane a little bit more magical. You'll bring a little bit more sacredness into your life. So, the first practice we're going to talk about tonight is bibliomancy. Now, bibliomancy is using books, pages, passages, or just simple lines in order to divine some deeper meaning or gain spiritual knowledge or wisdom. So, this is an often overlooked form of receiving messages. It doesn't just have to be about divination. But we also do know that this is a very ancient form of divination. We can trace it back thousands of years. So we know that the Jewish scholars would use the Torah to divine things in the future. We know that this is the idea of the I Ching as well. But you can use this with spiritual texts. You could use it with any text in your house. And you can choose a favorite book, or one of my favorite methods of doing this is to allow the power of synchronicity to bring the right message to me. So I'll go to one of my bookcases when I want to do a little bibliomancy and just be drawn to one of the levels of the bookcase. I like to close my eyes and then just begin to run your fingers over the spines of the books until they stop. So inevitably your fingers will stop. You'll feel drawn to something more than others. And from there, pick out that book off the shelf. And then I use the same kind of synchronicity to pick the page. So sometimes you'll see these memes going around. I've used them too, where it'll say turn to page 38 and then say, type in what the message was for you. And that's a great way to do it. But in your own practice, you don't need any guidance like that. So I've grabbed a book off the bookshelf. This particular book is the Pema Chodron collection. I've always loved her as a writer. She got me through some really tough times. So what I would do is then once I picked this book off the shelf is just run my fingers across its pages here until they stop. And then we're going to pick a page. Here we go. And then, if you'd like, just allow yourself to be drawn to any line on this page. So here I'm drawn to the main point of be grateful to everyone. The dig is that you want to get rid of the situation that drives you the most crazy. You don't want to be grateful to them. You want to solve the problems and not hurt anymore. So this is obviously a passage about gratitude. For each person, it's going to be different what we choose. Earlier, I chose one from a different book. This book was Meeting the Shadow. And this one was very interesting because it was about criminals. So it says, criminals are the massa confusca, a mass of confusion. They are, in the mind of the culture, the rejected cornerstone, worthless. Nothing solid or safe can be built on them. Rilke describes these kind of people as those in need. These people are flawed, the ones who most wouldn't notice at all if they didn't sing, didn't act out. Rilke said this is where you have good singing as opposed to good boy. This is where it all begins. And then it goes on in this passage. This is very interesting. We distance ourselves from all of this, choosing the common criminal to embody all these ugly and wanted traits while we remain straight, good, law abiding? Is this because we are by nature good people, or is this because we are afraid of being caught? So each of these passages might mean something to me different than other people. So in your own practice, you would go to your bookcase, pull out a book, run your fingers across it until you come to a page, and then let your eyes be drawn to a part of that page, perhaps a paragraph. So I really love this method a lot. For the rest of the day, then you would go and you would contemplate that. So if I was contemplating the passage from the Meeting the Shadow book, I would think about ways that I am kind of hiding from the bad stuff within me, right? That's what shadow work is anyway. And if we were to look at the Pima Chodron, it's about gratitude and about perhaps we don't want to have gratitude for people who cause problems in our lives. And so then from there on, I would begin to contemplate that passage for the rest of the day. How does it speak to something in my life? Can I relate it to something in my life right now? So a great way to, like I said, you could do divination this way, but I like to just simply get messages this way. It's something you can do every single morning, or you can do it before you go to bed as well. All right, and just saying hi to those who are joining us. Hi, Melinda, and everybody else. Okay, so let us go on to the next way, the next practice to spiritualize your life. So this is a very simple one, often overlooked, especially. This is eating in season. So we often don't really think as much about our diet when we're thinking about our spirituality, but in reality, our physical body is so interconnected with all of our etheric bodies. And what we eat really, when they say you are what you eat, there is truth in that. Everything that goes into the body is energy, and it goes to make the molecules of your own body as they change over time. So we as humans, we have become very much disconnected from the natural rhythms of the earth. And a lot of this has to do with the way our food is sourced to us. So we don't really reflect very much on the way we eat. And if you think about our ancestors were much easily more connected to the earth and the rhythms around them because they lived closer to the land. So they did learn to preserve foods, but most of the time they were eating in season. They weren't having airplanes and trucks that were bringing food from all the way across the world to them daily. So I'm not saying you can't eat food that has been shipped long distances, but it is something to think about, especially if you feel disconnected and you're trying to, get more connected to the spiritual and the divine. The energy of the land that you live on changes with the seasons. And so our ancestors would consume that energy as it changed. And we've kind of become divorced from that. So today we eat a lot of processed food. And like I said, we eat food that's coming from other climates that are miles, thousands and thousands of miles away. And this causes us to disconnect from the cycles of the earth, which makes it harder then for us to connect to spirit. So one thing you can do is try to eat as close to season as you can, and it can really help. So one way to do this is look at the produce section at the store and see what's on sale. What's on sale in the produce section is usually the food that's most abundant locally at that time. And those foods are generally going to be in season. That's going to change throughout the year, which means your diet is also going to change throughout the year, which is an important aspect of Ayurveda as well, which I'm hoping to do an episode on in the future, but it's a different way of eating for your body type and eating seasonally. So if we buy local as much as we can, like I said, doesn't mean you can't buy things that aren't produced here, but buying as local as much as you can, farmers markets, things like that, growing your own food if you have the space to do that. And then trying not to buy too much food that has been shipped from other countries, unless those countries are very, very close to you and you share borders with them. Find out what's in find out what's in season in your location, and that is going to vary depending on where you are. So you could just Google that, and you'll be able to find there's different foods in every different region, even within the United States. There are different foods that are in season in different places. So from there, number 3 is a bit related because it also relates to food. And one of the things is that food is one of the easiest ways that we can really up our vibration and really connect spiritually. So here, number 3 is we're going to cook and eat with intention. So cooking truly is magic. It's chemistry, and chemistry is converting things from one form into another. And there we can add this element of extra magic to it as well with our intentions. So we can imagine infusing our food with white light, with love, or with a specific intention. Stirring clockwise, or we would call that diasil, can also help us draw something in. So as we're cooking, if you are the cook, you can be stirring that food clockwise, infusing it with an intention, and those who then consume it, yourself included, intake that intention. Now, if instead you want to let go of something, there's been some bad luck in your family, you can stir counterclockwise or widdershins and have the intention of letting go of something. And then those who consume that food, it makes it easier for them to release it too. Now, you can still do this if you're not the cook. So let's say you're not the cook in the household. I'm not. I rarely cook here. I'm blessed. I'm blessed with a boyfriend who cooks for me. But I can always stir my food after it's been served and then put those intentions in if I want. If I want to stir clockwise to draw things in, or stir counterclockwise in order to release them. So another thing that we can do with our food, so once it's been cooked and it's been served, whether we cooked it ourselves or someone cooked it for us, or even in a restaurant when it was someone that we didn't know cooking it, you can bless your food before you eat it. So sometimes people, this is a very overlooked one because many of us have left some of the Abrahamic religions, much of the time Christianity, and we want to break away from a lot of the practices because there is sometimes an element of trauma in leaving that religion. But the blessing of food or the praying at meals is a way for us to really make that a sacred element. And think about it. Food is prana. Prana is energy and life. That is what we need to have vitality. The more vitality we have, the more we're able to access the higher energy centers. So we can bless our food a couple of different ways by sending that energy and that prana into it. So one way is just to simply rub the hands together until you've created some heat in between them. And then when you are ready, then you would just place the hands hovering over the food and just let that energy, direct that energy down into your meal. And then from then, you take that prana, that life energy, in with you. So not only is that food going to be nourishing your physical body, but you've added this element to it that has spiritualized it. And so now it's also going to be nourishing your etheric bodies. So another way that you can raise energy too is my favorite, the nail beds to nail beds. I personally think this raises energy faster than rubbing hands. So if you're not averse to rubbing your nails together, you just would rub them together like this. And then it's the same method once you've raised the energy. Then you just place your hands over the food and then just direct that prana, that energy, and any intention you want into the food as well. You could also do this with a glass of water in the morning, is especially good after you've woken up. If you put a bit of lemon in the water, even better. It's known to get the digestive juices going, get your digestion, your inner sun, your solar plexus activated. And you can send an intention and bless the water as well. So charging your hands, then placing them on the cup and sending the energy into it. Infuse it with any intention that you want, or just simply general white light and healing for your day. And you can do this with any beverage. It doesn't have to be water either. You can do it with your coffee or your tea, or I like to do it with juice. So there is if you've heard of Masaru Emoto, he had a series of experiments where he was looking at water crystals, and he had a camera that was able to look at the crystallized form of the water. And so what he would do is he would have people send certain intentions into the water. So they would say things to it like, I love you, I love you. And then on the other hand, they would be saying like, I hate you. You're so gross and so disgusting. And then when they would look at these water crystals, they would notice that there was a big difference. The water that had these positive things said to it looked more beautiful from our aesthetic standards, and the water that had mean things said to it would look I don't even want to say just less beautiful. And the thing is, people have disputed his study. They say that it didn't have enough, it wasn't scientifically validated. And I think we have to be very careful before we just throw things out like that. While it's true that it wasn't scientifically validated, maybe in the way that we expect in the West, in the East, for example, with traditional Chinese medicine, there isn't this need to validate everything scientifically. Knowledge is just known to work. So, but I will say that there was a double-blind study in Tokyo that did look at this mechanism with water, and they found that people who looked at the water that had had the pretty things, the pretty words said to it, did rate that water as more aesthetically pleasing. And it was a double-blind study, which means that the people who were rating it did not know which set of pictures was the water that had pleasant things said to it or not. So anyway, regardless of whether we believe the study is scientifically validated or not, it's very interesting. And as witches, we know there's a lot about this universe that we don't quite understand. And we do know that the power of our thoughts and intentions change things, including molecules. So if you want to bring a little bit of more joy and positivity into your life, try to infuse the water, the beverages you consume, the food you consume with good intentions. All right. Number 4, this is one of my favorite ones. Now, this one takes a little bit of work. So these other ones, you could just pray. Blessing your food is something very simple you could do, stirring your intentions in. The Bibliomancy is pretty quick. You just pull your book off the shelf. This one takes a little bit of preparation. So this is the affirmation jar, but I will add that the preparation is worth it. So this is great for bringing some spiritual into your life, but it's also good for combating and reprogramming a lot of those negative thoughts or limiting beliefs that so many of us suffer from. So they say that we think about 80,000 thoughts per day, and the vast majority of those thoughts are either repetitive, but most of them are actually negative, or they're not really serving anything. They're not serving our good in any way. So when you catch yourself saying something negative to yourself or thinking something negative, stop and write that down on a strip of paper, but negate it. So here would be an example. Let's say in my mind, I'm worried about money, and the thought crosses through my mind. It says, I'll never make enough money to live comfortably. So that's a pretty negative thought, right, with that word never. And I don't really want that reverberating in my mind, right, because that's changing my energy. And so I might change that or negate that into I make enough money to live comfortably. So very simple. I just took out the never will and put in make, right? And so I want to make these intentions, though, the best that I can. I want to put them in the present, like they're happening right now. And over time, you're going to accumulate quite a few of these. So like if you really do this practice, and it's true, if it's true that what they say, that we think so many negative thoughts, even within a day, you probably have a good handful of these. Now, once you have about 20 or so, you can put them in a jar. So I would get like a nice mason jar or something, put them all in there. And you can also add affirmations or quotes that you come across that you just really like something you read in a book or you saw a meme and you just really liked that sentiment. Put that in there too. So like I said, once you've got about 20 or so of these, you can start drawing one every day. And I would suggest doing it in the morning and just use the power of synchronicity to draw out the one that you most need to hear right now. And then you could just keep adding to your jar, and over time you might have hundreds of these in there. And after you look at the one for today, you can put it back in because you can always draw it on a different day. So it's just a neat way to bring a little bit of positivity, good positive messages into our life, especially the things that we need to hear the most in that moment. So that is the affirmation jar. Okay, number 5. This is another one that I really like a lot. I call this one Spontaneous Day, but I will tell you that if you don't have a day to do this, you can always make do with an hour or a couple of hours as well. So the problem with our ability to connect spiritually a lot of the time is there's too much structured time in this go, 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 go modern world that we live in. And so our idea, this linear idea of time, though it is necessary for us to live in this modern world with day-to-day schedules. I mean, just imagine if there was no linear time, it would be pretty difficult to schedule appointments and things like that. So it's a necessary aspect, but it does disconnect us from natural time. So we have to force ourselves actually to take a break from this linear world in order to have no structured time. And by this, I don't mean just watching TV or playing video games or things like that. Like, that's great. I like to do that too. And we need that relaxing. But this is a little bit different. You'll see when I kind of lay out the exercise. So we also see, that disconnection that we see. We will see this often in people who are sick, but they're forced to work, or a person who's like on their period and they're forced to like just push through, because sickness, our menstrual cycle, or when we're on our period, these are all things that are like inviting us in to go inward, to rest, to take some time to like disconnect from that linear time frame, right? That go, go, go world. So what we can do is we can add in the spontaneous day exercise, and it helps you just connect to natural time. Like, what if there was no such thing as time? That's the idea behind this exercise. And it helps us kind of learn our own natural rhythms, just follow our own intuition. It also makes us keenly aware of signs from the universe, because if you do this exercise enough, you will immediately kind of tap into that energy of synchronicity too. So the universe kind of responds to you. If you disconnect out of that, like, that linear space and time, the universe will respond to you by sending you more intuition, more messages, more synchronicities. So I suggest you try this exercise on a full day if you can spare it. But if you can only spare half a day or a few hours or even an hour, if that's all you can spare, it's worth trying this exercise. Any bit of time will help. So what you do is you're going to pick a time when you're not going to be disturbed, and you have to do this alone. So it has to be a time, if you've got kids, it has to be a time when they're not going to be there, your spouse, your partner, friends, nobody else is going to be there but you, because you really have to connect to yourself here. And so what you're going to do is you're going to decide whether you're going to walk, bike, drive, whatever you want to do. It doesn't matter which way you're going to move, but you got to move some way. And you're going to set out for the day with absolutely no destination. So there's no destination at all. Take with you anything that you're intuitively called to take with you, even if it's strange. Just kind of open up before you leave and just ask yourself, what am I being called to bring with me? And take those things with you. You never know why you're going to need them. And then you're just going to begin walking or riding your bike or driving or whatever it means that you're going to be traveling. You're going to just begin doing it and allow your own intuition to tell you when to turn, where to go. If you feel called to stop somewhere, you're going to stop there, and you're going to try to figure out why you were called to stop there. Were you called because you were supposed to see something? Look around. Are there signs that might have some meaning to you? Or were you called to actually go in somewhere? Were you called to go into a store and buy something and get, so maybe there's something there that you need? Were you called to meet a person? You never know why you're going to be called to stop somewhere. And you're just going to go out and explore the world with kind of this openness and curiosity. Turn here, go here, even about what you eat. Just let your, if you were on a diet or something, just try to throw it out the window and let your intuition guide you to what to consume that day as well. Just be open to the signs and synchronicities around you. If you have a question too, once you're kind of in the flow of all that, you can ask the universe for an answer to that question. And then just notice the first interesting thing that kind of pops out or sticks out for you, and then see if that has a message for you. So I just wanted to tell you a bit about my own experience doing this in Sedona. And this was like quite a long time ago. I think it was actually the first time I ever went there, and I was there for about 3 days. And then on the third day, I hadn't made up this exercise yet, but I ended up making it up afterwards, after I basically just was called to do it. And so this third day, I just had nothing to do. And so I'm like, I'm just going to drive around, and I'm just going to take turns here and there and stop different places. And I remember I was called to eat watermelon. So obviously my body needed something in the watermelon. So I found some watermelon somewhere and ate that. And then I was kind of driving, and I was kind of called to turn a certain place. And so I ended up going into this store and talking to this woman who, like, I had this very kind of enlightening conversation with her. And then I found this stone that was speaking to me at the store, and so I bought it. And so my day just went on and on, like this one kind of like turn led to another, and it was just such a magical and spiritual day. So if we can bring a little bit of that in every once in a while, it is just such an effective way to help us really spiritualize our lives. You know, it's a great way to connect to spirit, but it's also a way to connect to all of the elements, honestly. So when we are doing this, we will often find that we become very grounded when we're doing it. So there we're connecting to earth. The idea of spontaneity in and of itself connects us to the air element and the fire element, which are very variable and changing quickly. And also, typically, if you do this long enough for a couple of hours, you will generally drop into what we call the flow state. And this is a state that connects us to the element of water. So everything, one moment to the next moment in our lives, is simply just flowing. We're just flowing in and out with that. And it's also very good for connecting to your intuition as well. All right, so that is the spontaneous day exercise. Okay, so number 6. So this one is about using color. So using color to change your vibration, especially to connect you to the 7 main chakras. So people ask me a lot, because I teach shadow work and energy work as my specialty. People ask me a lot how to balance their chakras. And so one thing that we often forget about, there's a lot of different ways to balance the individual chakras through different exercises, both kind of mental and emotional exercises as well as physical ones. But we often forget one of the simplest things, and that's through color. So we can consider connecting to one chakra per day. So for example, you could just make an experiment of this, and starting tomorrow, perhaps, start by doing some connecting to the color red. So this could mean wearing something red. I always wear black. You probably noticed it's just the color I've always worn my whole life. But using red, bringing red, like a red necklace in or something, or red jewelry too. Eating red foods like berries, red bell peppers, things like tomatoes, things like that. And so just spend that day, the theme of that day is red, and you're going to connect to your root chakra that way. And then the next day, you could go and you could connect to the color orange. So wearing orange, or just a hint of orange, or just bringing orange in some way, an orange candle. Maybe you have an orange candle that you'll light for that day. Eating orange things like carrots and squash. And then on the next day, you connect to the color yellow. So I'm just going to go through them all so we have them connected to. And oh, sorry, but I should back up and say that the color orange will help us connect to our sacral chakras. And our sacral chakra is all about, whereas our root is about our grounding, our sacral chakra is really about our way to go with the flow. It connects to the element of water, has to do with our emotions and our intuition. And so then that next day, then maybe you would connect to the color yellow, and that connects to the solar plexus, which is all about our self-esteem and our will, and the things that energize us, give us self-confidence, give us drive and ambition. It's all about manifestation as well. It's like our internal sun. So wearing yellow, or bringing in a splash of yellow candles, yellow jewelry, yellow foods, bananas, and yellow bell peppers, and yellow squash, anything that's yellow. Then the next day, you could connect to the color of green. That brings you into the heart space. And the heart is all about the unconditional love and our self-love for ourselves, and expansion and compassion. And so here you connect to the color green, and wear green, eat green foods, have a green candle, green jewelry. And then from there, the next day you can connect to the color blue. That brings you to the throat, which is about your self-expression and your communication, and how you get your ideas out and make sure that people know who you are and what you need. Here we connect to blue. So bringing in the color blue, eating blueberries, or what else is blue? I went blank. Blue corn chips. Anything that's blue, you could eat on that day. That connects you to the throat. And then the next day, you can connect to the color purple, which really draws us into the third eye. And this is where our intuition is, and kind of our way to sort of expand out and be able to see things that are beyond us, receiving those flashes of intuition. And here we can wear purple clothing or splashes of purple, purple candles, purple foods, eggplant, purple carrots are very good. Um, and then that will connect to your third eye. And then finally, connecting to the color of white. So bringing in splashes of white, white candles, white crystals of any kind, white foods you could eat as well. And that connects us to the crown, which is our connection out into the universe, into the divine, into that thing that is beyond what we are in this moment. So like I said, you can wear the colors, you can get stones of those colors and carry them or have them in your jewelry, eat the foods of those colors. And so you can focus on that. You could do a whole week of that if you wanted. So whatever day you want to start on, and then you would just cycle through the 7 colors, 1 color for each day. But you can also focus on 1 chakra per week or 1 per month. So if you really want to really get into the root chakra, say that next week I'm just going to be working just on the root. So I'm really going to be working with that color of red all next week or all next month if you want to. So just a really nice way to kind of bring color in. It will change your vibration at the same time. It will help you connect to those energy centers and is a nice way to just kind of balance the system. All right, and then finally, the 7th one is adding spiritual contemplations to your actions. So even our most mundane actions can have a spiritual element to them. So this one is very good for all of the mundane things that we have to do in our everyday lives. A lot of these are the drudgery, the things we don't want to do. So when we're doing them, is there a way that we can contemplate a deeper meaning or make a connection in our minds that would be more elevating for us? So focusing on the symbolic nature of life, we can really honestly put spirituality into everything we do. So for example, let's say that we're sweeping the floor. It's something that we've all got to do, right? Imagine you're sweeping out all the negative energy, or you're sweeping your heart clean of negative emotions, negative emotional dust and debris that might be there, like fear or anger, or any of those not so positive emotions that we hold in the heart. So we just imagine ourselves sweeping those out as we're sweeping the floor. And here all of a sudden we've made this mundane thing into a more magical and spiritual activity. So imagine like washing your windows or something, like adding clarity to your thoughts or clearing out the cobwebs, right? So that we can see more clearly our vision and our goals. Perhaps doing laundry, like cleansing the aura or cleansing the emotions that you wear on your body day to day. So if you try to find something symbolic in everything you do, it's just an easy way to add an element of spirituality to the life or to your life. And then I also would add on here, this could be its own practice, but you can kind of bring this one in here with the 7th one as well. Just don't forget to always offer gratitude. So it's really important to offer some kind of gratitude every day, even if it's just for, saying I'm grateful for my breath. I'm grateful to be alive today. I'm grateful for the food I have to eat. So one of my teachers, she says she likes to do a 7-minute gratitude practice first thing in the morning. So instead of immediately reaching for the phone, she says put a little timer on the phone or on your watch or something for 7 minutes, and then just lay there with your eyes closed, and then just do an inventory of all the things that you're grateful for. And some days it's going to just be the same list, and sometimes in order to fill up the 7 minutes, you might just be repeating yourself, and that's totally fine. And you don't have to do 7 minutes either. You could do 3 minutes or just a minute. But just some way to express some gratitude every day is just a nice way to raise your vibration, which also helps you kind of spiritualize your life and connect to the divine. All right, so that is the 7 simple ways to spiritualize your life. Okay, so I'm going to open it up now for the Q&A. I've got a few questions that people gave to me earlier. I'm going to start with those, but if you're here live, you can ask me anything. It doesn't have to be about spiritualizing your life. It could be any topic at all. Okay, so I'm going to start with Tom. So he had a question about shadow work. And so he said, what is shadow work and how does one begin to do shadow work? Okay, so for those who are newer here, I just want to let you know I have a lot of videos on shadow work. So below, I am going to put a link to a full length class, Introduction to Shadow Work, which will teach you all about shadow work. But I'm just going to give a little short answer in a nutshell, especially for those who are newer and hear me talk about shadow work a lot. What is it? So shadow work is a method that we use to connect to and integrate the rejected parts of ourselves. So we all have these aspects of ourselves that get splintered off and kind of pushed into the shadows. And these can come through things that we were taught when we were growing up culturally, through our religions, through our families, through the culture that we are in, the people that we're around. As we were little kids, they told us what was right and what was wrong. And so there are traits that we need, for example, like aggression. We all need a little bit of aggression. So if you look out in the animal world, if an animal doesn't have a little bit of aggression in them, they often don't survive very long. But our society teaches us that aggression is bad. That leads to us like fighting or violence or things like that. And so what we do is we splinter off that little part of aggression and we push it off into the shadows, but it's still a part of us. And so all that energy that we spend kind of pushing that out, our jealousies, our aggression, all those not so nice traits about ourselves, we spend all this energy pushing it out. And that's energy that we could be using for other things like elevating spiritually. So what we do in shadow work is we work to reveal those rejected parts. We kind of turn a light on them. We acknowledge that they're part of us, and not only that, but many of them they actually serve a purpose. We can try to find better ways to subvert our energy into those things. So for example, like aggression, you can, if you're somebody who's like likes to be active, you can get some aggression out through like martial arts or climbing or hiking or biking or punching bags or things like that. So there's ways that we can, work with those energies to make sure that they're still here, but they're basically being funneled into a positive place. There's other things that we reject, which are like different roles that we tried on as a kid. So I often tell the story about me and ballet. So I was put into ballet school when I was like 5, and it didn't work out. And I don't remember much of it, but I was sent home before the end of the day, and there was this narrative that I just wasn't good enough for ballet school. I wasn't coordinated enough or flexible enough. And so this is a narrative that stayed with me, but in my shadows is that little ballerina. So that's always there. And there are ways that we can tap into the creativity of those rejected hats that we put on, we tried on, but we didn't end up wearing. So our shadow is essentially at the core of all of it. It's those rejected parts that we want to learn how to essentially acknowledge, integrate, and some of them to actually use them for good. So that's shadow work. And one way that a lot of people, I know you said, how does one even begin? And one way to begin, probably the simplest way to begin, is just to start contemplating the things that trigger you the most, because those things that are triggering you and other people are often kind of scratching the inside of you, which contains all those parts, right? So anything we're kind of like alarmed about or triggered by outside and others often has something to teach us. So it's usually a way that people can begin to sort of see where their shadow selves lie and then begin to think about how they would integrate them. But like I said, it's a big concept. I will drop a link below that has the workshop that you can check out, and you'll learn more about it, including other methods on how to do shadow work as well, not just those prompts, like looking at your triggers. Okay, so I got another question from Jen. So she said, I'm never sure about offerings. So how long do you leave them out, and how do you dispose of them respectfully? Okay, so very good question. And Jen, I did see you had another post, so I know there's like a little bit more to this and I had not gotten a chance to write back to you yet or comment on there yet. But offerings can be super simple. They don't have to be complicated at all. So traditional offerings are often foods. They can be sweets, cakes. You'll see on many lists, people will say rice. And this is interesting because a lot of times where that comes from is it's very cultural. So if you were living in parts of Asia, rice would be a very traditional offering to give because it's a traditional food of the land. So if you live in a place where there people are constantly growing rice, it's a good offering, but it might not be the best offering if you don't live in a climate where there is rice, especially if you're going to be giving offerings to ancestors who lived on that land. So I'm going to come back to that in a second. But because these food offerings can be very cultural. Flowers, though, are always a good offering, always a good offering. Just think about the things that if you were, um, you yourself were an ancestor, right? I mean, just think about like what are the things that you would like, right? Flowers and beautiful things, right? Incense in and of itself is an offering. When we burn incense, we can have many different intentions with it, but one of them can be, I'm burning this incense for this ancestor. This is my gift to you. I personally love song. I sing as a part of an offering. In fact, our ritual that's coming up for Lunaza is I'm going to be doing two offerings, which are actually songs to these two deities. But reading poetry as well can be an offering. So there's all different kinds of offerings. You can make it really simple. What I was going to say is that because I saw your other post, I know that the ancestor is from New England, I believe, and so you could think about like what are the traditional foods of people from New England, and that could be something to offer. But you could offer candles, flowers, incense, song, poetry, anything you feel called to. The other thing is that you can really listen to your intuition and just sort of close your eyes, maybe go into a light meditative state, and then ask yourself or not ask yourself, but ask the ancestor, like, what would you like? And then don't be afraid of just whatever first pops into your mind is often the right thing. So I've told this story before about the fairies and in the kind of the nature spirits in my yard, and they like sand from the beach, and we live 20 some miles from the beach, so I don't know why they like sand. I'm not going to question it, but it's my intuition. When I ask them what they want, that's what they say they want. When I go to the beach, they'd like me to bring some back. So you just kind of go with it, go with the first thing that comes, and it's often the right one. Now, as far as disposing of an offering, here I feel pretty strongly about this, and I'm definitely one of those people who, if you've listened to several of my videos, you'll know that I'm very open-minded too, and I really encourage people to go with their intuition. If you think the color red means something that is kind of different than what other people think it means, go with what it means for you. Always kind of listen to your intuition. But here is one thing that I feel like pretty strongly about. Like, I don't believe that we should throw offerings out into the garbage. It just, to me, when we give an offering, especially if it's food that, like, on the etheric plane, it has been consumed by that being, whether that's an ancestor or a god or another spirit. And so when we just throw it out in traditional garbage can, I feel like it just desecrates like something that was so sacred and so spiritual. And so what I recommend people do is they take the offerings, and I've done this for 25 years, more than 25 years since I began, is take the offerings outside somewhere and leave them for the nature spirits. And most of the offerings that we give, like pretty much everything on here, like obviously song, incense, things like that, the incense will be burned and will be gone. The song is something you sing, poetry you read. But if you're offering like foods or flowers or different things like that, most of these things are organic, which means they're going to decompose. It's not like we're putting trash out. You're putting food out or flowers out. So leave them somewhere in the yard. Or if a person doesn't have a yard, and even when I lived in apartments, we would just go out. We would find some place outside of the apartment building, and we would leave this small offering to the nature spirits. So that would be my suggestion on offerings. Okay, so I hope that helps. Okay, so I've got a couple of, and if you got any more questions, I see Jen's here. If you got any more questions about it, definitely I can elaborate too. All right, so Melinda said, since there are 7 days of the week and 7 main chakras, is there a specific day of the week that would correspond with each of the 7 different chakras? Not necessarily. I actually thought about that too as I was kind of preparing for this episode tonight. So Not really. You know, there are color correspondences for each day. So, for example, people will say that like Wednesday is yellow because it's connected to Mercury. But when we're starting to use those correspondences, it's a little bit. Those are tend to be Western, and the chakras is an Eastern system. So the traditional colors of the days of the week in the West wouldn't really connect to the chakra system anyway. So what I would say probably is you could just start on any day. I was thinking about this. You could start on a Monday and just start with the root, or you could start on the Sunday and start with the root, or just start tomorrow with the root, but not necessarily. It's not really necessarily a day of the week for each chakra. Okay, so Lori said, oh, she can't get into the live. Okay, but she's on here commenting. Can't seem to get into your live. All I can do is comment. Huh. I don't know. I'll look into that later, Lori. Sorry. Okay, so Kristen said, when we are trying to do something where we are trying to visualize light, does it need to be light? When I first started trying to visualize light, I couldn't see it well at all, but I could visualize smoke, beautiful smoke. Does it matter what I visualize as long as I don't have a negative connotation? Yeah, no, everybody's going to be a little bit different. So a lot of people will say visualize white light. That doesn't resonate with everybody. They might visualize different colors, but what you're truly doing is you're visualizing energy, honestly. So if the energy comes to you as kind of this beautiful wispy smoke, that's totally fine. That's just the way that you're seeing it. So yeah, don't worry about that. As long as it doesn't have like a negative connotation. If it's like dark and sinister, obviously that would be a problem. But yeah, beautiful wispy smoke, I think it's great for your visualizations. Okay, Misty said, what if you had cats in the yard and you don't want them to eat anything that would be poisonous to them? Would it be okay to bury the offering instead of just leaving it out? Yes, absolutely. Yeah. So if there's anything like, for example, certain flowers or things that you might be offering that were poisons and it could be poisonous to the cats, absolutely bury it outside is a great way because it's still giving it back to the earth, still giving it back to the nature spirits. You're just making sure that animals who might try to eat it and it was poisonous to them aren't going to do that. Yeah, good question. Okay, any other questions here? I'll just wait a minute to see if anybody's got anything more, but that's all I've got for today. So I hope that you enjoyed tonight's episode, and definitely try one of these little methods of spiritualizing your life and see what it does, see how it changes your energy, and how it how it frames the rest of the week for you and the rest of the day. Okay, so if there is another question here. Okay. Have you ever come across anyone who can't seem to find their triggers to shadow work? I just can't seem to understand the concept of triggers, so I'm really struggling with trying to do shadow work. Okay, so it could be that it's the way that we're using the word. So when we say triggers, we mean the things that annoy you. So that might be a better way to think about it. So I mean, most people are annoyed by something, right? So if you can think about somebody who annoys you, that's a good place to start. Something that irks you, something that gets under your skin. So sometimes it's just that word trigger. It doesn't. People don't really respond to that. But basically, what you're looking for are the things outside that are causing a negative reaction in you in some way. Those lead to your shadow parts. Okay, so I hope that helps. But if not, I can elaborate on that more too. And if I miss any questions, I will always go back here in the chat and I will grab these later too, and I'll answer more of them later. Okay, well, I'm going to sign off for tonight, but I hope you enjoyed the show, and I will see you next week. Until next time, blessed be.